Welcome back. In this video, we're going to fix an issue that arises when we use different types of weapons with the same animations. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up an assault rifle and switch to it. And notice that the hand is not quite on the right spot. Now, on top of that, if we switch back to our default weapon, the hand is also not quite staying still. And that's because our aim offsets are not perfect. They're going to have a little bit of offset for the hand placement. So we can fix that, and that's what we're going to fix in this video. Now let's go ahead and open up Shooter AnimBP, the animation blueprint. Now in Shooter AnimBP, we're going to go into our anim graph, and all the way down at the bottom, you'll see that we have cached pose, cached rotated root bone. This is the final pose going into the output pose. Now we're going to take the use pose cached rotated root bone and we're going to use it down here. So I'm going to copy and paste cached rotated root bone here. Now I'm going to right click and type Fabrik, F-A-B-R-I-K. Fabrik is an inverse kinematics technique that allows us to move a particular bone on our skeleton, such as the hand, and all the bones attached to it, such as the elbow and the shoulder, all adjust in a way that makes sense for the skeleton. Now, in order to use a Fabrik node, if we hook up our pose up to the Fabrik node, you'll see that we automatically get a local to component transformation. That's because Fabrik works in component space and our rotated root bone cached pose is in local space. So we need to allow it to convert to component space for us. Now, since we're going from local to component space, after the Fabrik algorithm, we need to go back from component to local space. So if we type component, we can get component to local. And we're going to drag off of this and cache this pose. Now this pose I'm going to call cached Fabrik SMG. And this will be the cached pose using Fabrik to place our hands at the right location for the SMG weapon. Now select the Fabrik node and you'll see that we have some things in the details panel. Now we have a option to select an effector target, and this is going to be one of the bones on the skeleton. We're going to select hand R, and that's the right hand bone on the skeleton. Now in effector transform space, we need to set this to bone space. That way we can adjust the bones using our Fabrik node. Now it says effector rotation source. We're going to select no change, preserve existing component space rotation. The reason is because we want to change our location information for our bone. Now the solver is the actual Fabrik algorithm, and it's going to need to know which bone to reference when we solve for this. And we're going to reference the hand L bone. That's the left hand bone. And we're going to set the root bone property to upper arm L. And that's because we'll treat upper arm L to be the root for this solving algorithm. Now, effector transform, this is going to be where we want our hand bone to be. And we can see that it's exposed as a pin, but we can uncheck that. And suddenly we have a drop-down allowing us to actually select the location for this bone. So if we drag out so we can see this viewport better, now since we have unchecked expose as pin, we can now override the location for this end effector. So what we're going to do is we're going to use cached Fabrik SMG for the output pose. So let's type cached Fabrik SMG and plug this into the output pose. And now when we select our Fabrik node, if we hit compile, we have the opportunity to change the bone to actually move it around until it's at the right spot. So what we're going to do is I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so you can see. We're going to move this bone, this is the hand L bone, and we're going to move it to the correct spot on the gun. So once we have this at the correct spot on the gun, and that looks just about right, then we're going to basically maintain this offset from the other bone, the bone hand R, which we're calling the effector target. We're going to maintain the offset from that bone by altering the bone's hand L through upper arm L. That's what Fabrik does. Now, once we've adjusted this bone to where it looks like it's at the correct spot relative to the other hand on the gun, we can go ahead and hit play. And now we'll see that no matter where we look, where our aim offset is, we have our hand on the weapon at all times. And we can go ahead and prove this to ourselves by going back to the main editor here and hitting play and moving our aim offset to a strange angle like this, and getting our mouse cursor and ejecting so that we can move around and take a look at that position, and it's exactly on the gun where we need it to be. It wasn't doing this before. It was actually moving off the gun a little bit when you looked at an angle like this. Just to prove it to you, I'm going to come back to the animation blueprint, and instead of using our cached Fabrik SMG, I'm going to put it back to what it was using before, cached rotated root bone. I'm going to compile that, and I'll look at the same angle up here in this direction and get my mouse cursor and eject, and that way I can look at where the hand looks and it's slightly off. Not so bad at this angle, but there are some angles where it's not the best, like right here, for example. I'm going to eject right here, and you'll see that the hand is reaching out a little bit, and this is when we're looking slightly to the right. Now, let's go ahead and put our cached Fabrik SMG back in, and we'll look to that same angle to the right, and I'll get my cursor and eject, and you'll see that it's more on the weapon at the correct location. So this is sort of a minor change when it comes to the SMG, but the real magic will happen when we're using an assault rifle. So let's make this same mechanism for the assault rifle. So here in Shooter NMBP, let's go ahead and use our cached rotated root bone. Let's make a copy of that, and we'll go from local to component. And from here, we'll use another Fabrik node. So I'm gonna go ahead and just copy this Fabrik node. And then we'll go ahead and do a component to local, and then we'll cache this one. And I'm gonna call this cached Fabrik AR. Now we're gonna use cached Fabrik AR right here for the output pose. We're gonna say use cached Fabrik AR. Let's plug that into the output pose and compile. Now we can select this Fabrik node and we can adjust the weapon. Now, in order to know where we need this to be for the AR, we need to change the preview asset on our hand bone. So we can do that by going to our skeleton tab and selecting skeleton tree, and we can scroll down and look for right hand socket. Now, right hand socket has Bellica guns for its preview asset right here. Now, if we right click on right hand socket, we can remove all attached assets, and now that gun will be gone. And instead, we can right click and add preview asset, and this time we can type AR4, and we can get SKAR4, and that gives us the assault rifle. Now we can make a few minor adjustments to the assault rifle. For the most part, it looks like it's in the right location, but we do need to move it back a little bit so that way it's properly seated in Bellica's hand. So we can click save and close out of Bellica's skeleton. Now, Shooter NMBP is still showing the old weapon, so let's go ahead and save and close out of that, and then we'll reopen Shooter NMBP. And now we'll see that we have our assault rifle. So now we can adjust the hand until it looks correct on the assault rifle. So click on the Fabrik node and adjust the hand. We're going to bring it up a little bit until it's on this part of the weapon. And we can just adjust it to where it's grabbing the weapon. Now this doesn't have to be perfect. We just want it on the right spot relative to the gun. So we can go ahead and save this. And just to make sure everything updates properly, we're going to close out of everything, click Save All. So I went ahead and restarted the editor just to make sure everything is updating properly. And I'm going to go ahead and open Shooter NMBP, and we're using here the cached pose, cached Fabrik AR. That's what we're using. So we're using this cached pose that is altered by the Fabrik node that we've adjusted for the assault rifle. So let's go ahead and hit play, and we're going to move our pose a bit and get my mouse cursor so I can eject, and you'll notice that the character is holding the arm out a little bit because this is the pose for the assault rifle. So if I possess again and I pick up an assault rifle and I switch to the assault rifle, now I can get my mouse cursor and eject so I can come around and look and see that her hand is at relatively the correct location for the assault rifle. So now we have the ability to use a cached pose that is appropriate for a specific gun. So we have two different ones, one for the SMG and one for the AR. Now, how are we going to switch between these two? Well, we're going to take care of that in the next video, where we can change our pose depending on which weapon we're holding. So we'll see you in the next video.